Hi everyone, this is Arcadius and welcome back to Naval Creed. Today we start our review of the Soviet battleships, or at least the ones that are currently released in the game. This being the Dreadnought era battleship line, not the World War II line, the Dreadnought one. But I do want to let you know before we start going over this, there is something that is relatively new that I am not aware of until I just opened up the game. You are able to purchase Poltava and equip her and play her, or at least I assume you would be able to play her. And they also have what Lenin would look like. And I did not see this coming at all. I didn't see this in any of the Facebook pages. I saw that there was some work on the tier 9.6 cruisers that I mentioned yesterday, but nothing in regards to this. And honestly, she looks really good. So you have the triple 16s out front. You have some triple 152s on the side, some smaller, possibly 130s, possibly 100s. I don't know. Yeah, this is what Lenin is going to look like. So pretty much just a Russian Nelson. And then obviously we already have Poltava, which is kind of a mix between a Kronstadt and a Scharnhorst, I would say. Um, but yeah. All right, we'll get to those and review those once they actually come out with the entire line. But it looks like you are now able to play Poltava at least. All right, so the Dreadnought Line. So let's see what ships we have. So we start out with Gangut with 12 12-inch guns. One thing you will notice in this first battleship line for the Soviet Union is they will almost always outmatch every other battleship with sheer firepower. There's only one exception, that being the Tier 8 Navarino, which has equal and kind of worse guns than other ships at that tier, but everything else is going to be absolutely overpowering. So we start off with 12 12-inch guns at Tier 4. At Tier 5, we also have 12 12-inch guns, but in a slightly better gun layout. A few more secondaries as well. Then we go to 12 14-inch guns at Tier 6. Yep, Tier 6. But we return to a pretty bad gun layout. Then we have Sinop with 3 triple 16-inch guns arranged in a interesting layout that doesn't allow you to fire the B turret directly ahead. So it's kind of like a wannabe Gaskogna with one turret and one turret if you're going forward or directly astern. If you're on the broadside, you can use all three, but it's an interesting design that's actually historically accurate. The actual design for this did have it like this. And then we go to Navarino with 3 triple 16-inch guns that look way too big for the ship in general. With an interesting layout of 2 turrets in the stern with 1 in the bow. This is my least favorite Dreadnought Soviet battleship by far as of right now. And then we have Rastaslav, which has the firepower of a Montana at Tier 9 with 3 quadruple 16-inch guns. And then last but not least, Ekaterina with 4 quadruple 16-inch guns. This thing has 16 16-inch guns, and boy is she powerful. Now, a common trait between all of these ships is you have, well, Dreadnought level armor. So you're not easy, you can be easily citadeled, even at ranges. I think the only one that I really had trouble citadeling was Sinop most of the time. Your speed is not terrible. It's actually pretty decent for all the ships, except maybe Imperatrice Marie and Gangut, but that's to be expected with Tier 4 and Tier 5 ships. But even against other Tier 4 and 5 battleships, they're not terrible. They're pretty average. Anti-aircraft defenses are practically nothing. Do not expect any of these battleships to be good with anti-aircraft defense at all. You might get 2 or 3 aircraft, but that's if you're lucky, honestly. So you're absolutely going to be food for carriers. So accept that right now. Try and stay close to teammates that have good AA defense to help you out. And then secondaries. Yes, you do have a ton of secondaries. You can see all the casemates on the side of Katarina. Um, these are limited use casemates, I would say, because your max range on any of these ships is going to be like 5.5. This one's even 5.0. And it's very limited on what they can actually do. So your main and only reason to play these ships is their firepower, and it is, like I said, almost unmatched at every single tier. So, what does well, we start with Gangut, so let's take a look and see what we have for her. So we start off 46,800 health, 17% torpedo damage resistance. It looks like 12 inches maximum armor, with that being on the turret backs. It looks like the backs of the turrets are the most armored. That's interesting. But yeah. And then you have a belt of about 225, which is just over 8, I think. So like 8.5 or so. Your armor can be okay angled, but if you go broadside, you will actually be citadel pretty easily. But it also works out that your citadel is pretty low in the water, I believe, because it's not easy to hit. Yeah, it's pretty close to the waterline. And at these tiers, your accuracy for battleships is not the greatest. So even if you aim at the waterline, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hit the waterline. So you may be able to see the citadel, but hitting it is a different matter. But if you do get close enough that accuracy is rendered not a real problem, then yeah, you're going to pay the price for it. Let's see, what else do we have? We have, as mentioned, the 4 triple 12-inch gun turrets, and you can keep 2 on target no matter which way you turn. So if you're heading this way, you can move A and C turret this way, and then have B and D turret do the 180 turn, and vice versa for this way, and then it's the same for a stern this way and a stern that way. So at any given time, you can at least have 2 gun turrets on a target while the other 2 are rotating, which gives you pretty decent field of fire. That being said, though, to get all of your 4 target or turrets on target on a broadside, you do have to give a pretty large amount of angle and broadside to the enemy. Let's see here. Guns, kind of slow at 1.9 rounds a minute. 180-degree turn time at 36 seconds. These shells are pretty good as well. Another thing you'll be able to find with these battleships, especially the ones that have quite a few barrels, so everything except Sinop and Navarino, is that whether you use armor piercing or high explosive, it doesn't matter, because if you get enough shells to make connections, you're going to get a ton of damage. So armor piercing pens, you're going to get a ton of damage, and high explosive, you're also going to get a ton of damage plus fires. It's not unheard of to get 2 or 3 fires per salvo on some of these ships. And I finished games even at lower tiers where I have like over 20 fires. So these ships can definitely be pretty decent HE spammers as well. But don't underestimate their armor piercing, especially if you're in a cruiser. Yeah, you want to try and stay away from these as much as possible, I would say. So yeah, guns are good themselves. Main guns go up to 15.5 kilometers. Secondaries go to 4.4. You have a few secondary casemates, nothing too good. They are pretty decent against destroyers, or at least very heavily damaged destroyers, even to the extent of cruisers, I would say. Against battleships, practically nothing. And the carriers at this tier, since you are a tier 4 battleship, I guess they would be okay against them. Your anti-aircraft defense, or lack thereof. Actually, if I remember correctly, Gangut has the strongest anti-aircraft suite at tier 4, even better than Kaiser. So on paper, you have really good AA defense, but that still is not going to save you from any kind of carrier strike. Let's see here. We have speed of 23 knots, so not the fastest, not the slowest. I think Kaiser goes 24, but then you also have New York at a matchmaking 4.5 that goes like 21. So you're kind of in the middle, but then there's also Congo at tier 5, which you might see once in a while. That goes like 30 knots. So it's really what kind of matchmaking game you're tossed into, but for the most part, you're going to have good average speed. One last thing about the ship, and actually about the entire Dreadnought Battleship Soviet line, they don't have a lot of superstructure, if you've noticed, which means that it's actually really, well, not the easiest to farm high explosive damage off of them from enemy ships. Certainly you can get pens on lightly armored sections like the bow and the stern, but to actually aim for amidships and get high explosive damage is going to be quite difficult, even with setting fires, because they're going to actually just shatter along the main belt and upper belt. It's not impossible to light a ton of fires on these ships, but it's a lot harder than normal. That being said, if you do come across German secondaries, which focus upper belt and superstructure, those will tear you apart, even if you don't have that much superstructure. With that, let's toss Gangut into a game and see what we can do today. Alright, and here is the game. We have 5 battleships, 3 cruisers, and 1 port destroyer. No carriers, which is pretty decent. And not the best map, honestly. I want to like this map more than I do, but either you go directly into everyone else on the enemy team, or you go to either wing, and you come across maybe 1 or 2 ships, and you take them out easily, and then you're stuck doing nothing the rest of the game. It kind of forces you to go right into the middle. I do have health and speed buffs applied as always, so do keep that in mind. And let's get ourselves into this game. So let's see what ships we have. As a 4.0, there's only 3 4.0 or around 4.0 ships, battleships in this game. So we have Gangut for the Russians, we have Kaiser for the Germans, and we have Queen Mary for the British. Japanese has a 5.0, American has a 4.5. See what else? French has a 4.6. The Italians don't have any. Pan-Asian, nothing. And then for battleships for British, they have a 5.0. But for actual 4.0s, we only have these 3. And out of all of these 3, I would say that Gangut is the most powerful. Though Kaiser is a big runner-up. Alright, so let's see what kind of gun angles we have. So it looks like to get all 4 of our gun turrets on target, we would have to give this kind of angle, which isn't terrible, honestly, but not the best. You would still eat a ton of damage in the nose. And so technically we are in range of this destroyer, however my chances of hitting her, I would say, are pretty low. So we're going to get a little bit closer. So I think this Omaha might be waking up to a few fires in a second. So I do have high explosive loaded right now because I'm going to be going up against a bow on targets. And armor piercing will not be going through the nose of any of these targets right now. So start off with high explosive, no fires, but 2 pens for almost 4,000 damage. You can kind of see how the accuracy on these ships is going to be a bit of a shotgun effect, but you have so many shells that it doesn't really matter. Right, so if I had armor piercing right here, I could definitely delete this Omaha, but I'll just do almost 10,000 damage and still get a fire. So you can immediately see that even if I didn't immediately destroy her, she still lost about half of her health. And that's just 1 salvo. She did repair the fire as well. And let's see what else we can do for this next salvo. 2 fires, 7,700, 7,700 damage, and that Omaha is going to be sunk. We can try and take out this Clemson, I think. Looks like she's going to go down soon. So let's switch to the Firitaka. Now let's switch to armor piercing as well. So even on a Firitaka, over 11,500 damage and 2 fires. So you can easily see how this ship being as an HE spammer would be quite powerful. Maybe not the best, but not the worst by a long shot. Even though I do have armor piercing loaded, I'm thinking about taking on this destroyer here just to finish her up. But I don't know what other targets I have right now, so let's see what we have first. So the Firitaka is still burning, the Ibari is burning. I guess I can fire at the Gangut on their side and see what happens. 16.7 thousand damage right off the bat. And now we kind of have to pull back a little bit. Our secondaries are opening up. As you can see, I have Alpha and Charlie turret. And let's see, we have a Kaiser. Oh, that's actually our Kaiser that's sent. No, it is their Kaiser. Alright, so let's see what we can do against her real quick. I would say that's a decent amount of damage. Let's focus our secondaries on the... Is that the Firitaka or the Ibari? I think that's the Firitaka, so I don't think I'm going to do much. But I mean, at least it's something. Focus secondaries on the Ibari. And let's see what 12-inch guns can do to this Kaiser. Almost 18,000 damage in the tier 4 battleship. I'm hoping my secondaries can actually take out this Ibari. Be nice. And now we just have to do the battleships one at a time. There's one. I'm going to pop a heal. Because I am taking a little bit of secondary damage from all these ships. And now fire damage. Alright, there is still another Kaiser, so let's send some more shells that way. And immediately half the ship is taken out with almost 20,000 damage done. This Gangut is getting a little close at this time, so let's see if we can send her off with a few parting shells. There we go. And now we just have to do all these battleships one at a time. Though it is 3v3 right now, surprisingly. But as long as they come to me one at a time, I can handle them pretty easily. There's another 17,000 damage. And I think my team can finish off the Kaiser. Though I will put my secondaries on her. And put out the double fire. Neither of these is really good angle for these ships. Well, let's still just see what we can do. 4 pens, 6 non-pens, or ricochets I should say. Let's start rotating Bravo Delta turret over. And get ready to put some 12-inch shells into the sides of these Queen Marys. I could switch over to high explosive and probably do a bit better, considering they would start fires as well. But I'm going to have their broadside, or at least a broadside soon enough. So I can wait just a little bit longer. Let's pop another heal. 6 pens for almost 10,000 damage. And then we should be able to finish up Queen Mary here in a moment. There she goes. And now we just have the last one. How is my team doing? Full Queen Marys. Awesome. Alright, it's hard to tell if the ship is going to keep turning or not. So we're going to switch over to high explosive anyways. But I still was able to do over 15,000 damage between pens and overpens. So you can see how whether you have high explosive and do a ton of damage and set fires, or you just use armor piercing, you're still going to do so much damage. It's not even funny. Alright, now I have high explosive loaded. Kind of aiming for the main tower. 2 fires, 8,000 damage. And I can aim for the astern and get even more fires if I get my aim correct. Alright, so let's see if we can finish off the Queen Mary by setting off more fires. Oh, one more fire. Secondaries are opening up. Not that I really expect them to do much. And there she goes. Alright, so let's see how we did today. 224,000 damage, 2 ships sunk, 152 shell hits, 1 aircraft shot down, 8 fires, 1 module destroyed, and 91 secondary hits for 4,900 base XP. We did 48,000 damage to high explosive, 148,000 damage in armor piercing, fires did 21,000 damage, and secondary battery did 6,600 damage. So you can see how your secondary battery may not be the best, but it's also not terrible either or worthless. You can still do a little bit of damage. HE Spammer, you can set tons of fires that do a lot of damage, and armor piercing, if you don't outright destroy the target, you make it hurt very, very much. This line is very, very powerful if you have not already tried it. Like I said though, you're going to be extremely weak against aircraft carriers and anything with really big guns because your armor is going to be trash. So with that, I will wrap up today's video. If you liked the video, make sure you like and subscribe for further content, and join me tomorrow while we go over almost the most identical ship ever, that being Imperatrice de Maria. So again, thank you and take care.